that we meet on the traditional country of the Paramount Kaurna people. We pay our respects to ancestors and elders past and present as the custodians of this ancient and beautiful land. Together we'll care for this place for the generations to come, and in this context, the decisions we make should be guided by the principle that nothing we do should decrease our children's ability to live on this land. We don't have any apologies tonight. We do have 2 pre-approved leave of absences. Do we have any additional leave of absence requests this evening? No, and Councillor Walcott has indicated that she'll arrive a little bit later, so there's no one absent. Minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Irvin, you happen to make sense. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Grant. All those in favour, please indicate. That is carried unanimously. Do any elected members have a conflict of interest for any item tonight? Councillor Axton and Councillor Mudge.
Yes, thank you. I will declare a material conflict of interest for item 11.1.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Are you going to state?
I will leave. Sorry.
And you're stating the reason for that?
I am employed by a gas company, so I will leave during that debate.
See which green gas. Councillor Mudge.
My confidence in general conflict as relates to item 11.1. Do you want me to say it?
Yeah, even
So I'm currently undertaking a contract with FA Water, have recently been announced by the government as being decorporatised and turned into the SA Gas and Water Trust. We will oversee a contract with Santos. Santos is South Australian Strategic Gas Reserve. There may be exceptions on this item, however, this is quite a stretch and the decorporatisation has not yet occurred. I'm a temporary contractor, not gain or lose, sorry, not have a gain or a loss as a result of the outcomes of this motion. So I will stay in chamber and participate in the debate.
Do you have any other conflicts of interest? Move on to opening remarks. First, I'd just like to welcome everyone in the gallery. Thank you for coming along this evening. And just be mindful, being in a new location without our microphones all set up, if we can just still follow due meeting process. I think that's really important. But outside of that, I don't have any particular remarks. We have no questions adjourned or lying on the table, no petitions, no deputations. We do have a public forum. Let's get an indication from the gallery who would like to speak in the public forum. Let's have 2 hands at this point. Okay, so that means you can have up to 5 minutes each. Mr. Tate, if you'd like to come forward first and just sit up at the front there. And then you've got up to 5 minutes, including questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and CEO and councillors. I wish to record this meeting.
Yep, we're recording and streaming live at the moment. Thank you.
But I wish
It's
to
being
record
recorded.
it myself.
That's fine.
Thank you. By the way, I won't take 5 minutes, what I need to say. On Thursday, the 4th of June, I received this email from Brittany Ryanberg, Executive Assistant to the Mayor and the CEO, and it reads, "Good afternoon, Mr. Tate. I am contacting on behalf of CEO Greg Georgopoulos to say thank you for your letter of appeal requesting a rescission of the motion resolved on the 25th of July 2023 to have council supported Australian Airlines return to the 26th of January. Your letters and supporting documentation will be provided to the elected body for their consideration at the upcoming ordinary council meeting on Tuesday, the 9th of June at Nairn Road, Woodside. In the meantime, have a great long weekend. Kind regards, Brittany Pereira, Executive Assistant to the Mayor and CEO. Mr. Mayor, I was surprised that it was not on the agenda, as my letter was received by the council on the 28th of May by Registered Post, which is 12 days prior to today. So why was that? And I asked the question, when will it be recorded or talked about in the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Tate. So with respect to that decision, council has an existing decision in relation to that matter. And the two ways that that could possibly change is if the administration were to bring an item to the elected body, or if an elected member was to bring an item to like a motion or notice. So with respect to rescission motions in particular, they can't be considered as a motion without notice. They need to be a written motion on notice. And I understand that you raised that letter. I only saw the letter today, just to let you know. I hadn't seen it before it was circulated to me earlier today. So that would be one reason that it's not on the agenda at this point. I'm not sure if the administration had anything in relation to that.
So it's not administration to actually hide the matter?
I don't think they're hiding the matter. We were all circulated and provided with a copy in front of us this evening in relation to that letter. But if an elected member was wanting to do something in relation to that, then they could bring a motion or notice to the chamber.
But having said that, there was those number of days that I don't understand.
Well, I can't comment on that, but the administration might have.
Anyhow, I'll move on.
Sure. Or you can move on if you like. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll move on. In support of my letter of appeal to the Mayor and the CEO and councillors, I say this, and I've said it before, true democracy and in accordance with the Commonwealth of Australia's 1901 Constitution consists of goodwill, transparency and accountability. Democracy is defined and described in the Macquarie Australia's National Concise Dictionary. I bring this matter of true democracy particularly to every councillor here and I refer you all the council letter to me dated the 4th of June 26 that referred to our appeal to your council to rescind the motion on the 27th of July 23 for your council to again celebrate Australia Day and present citizenship and civic awards on the 26th of January yearly. Therefore, when every councillor votes on this highly contentious issue, I believe, and our action group believe, it should be disclosed to all ratepayers and residents how each councillor voted on this matter prior to the council election in November this year.
Do you just wrap it up?
Anything less, I'm about to wrap it up. Anything less would be contrary to the definition of democracy. Yours sincerely, John Tate, on behalf of the Adelaide Hills Council Ratepayers and Residents Action Group, 9th of June 2026, and I welcome any questions regarding my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Tate. We are out of time, so I'll have to pass it over to the next president who'd like to speak to the council. But as I mentioned, and I'm just looking at the email that you referred to now, you know, we have received that documentation. It's not a formal part of the agenda. As I mentioned, it will be up to an individual elected member if they wanted to bring a motion on those for the council and elected body to have a discussion about that matter.
And have I ran out of time because no one wants to ask me a question?
No, it's been over 5 minutes and the maximum time allowed is 5 minutes to the public.
Okay.
I think I gave me a bit of extra.
Thank you.
No. So Ms. McNamara, if you'd like to come up and speak to the elected body.
Hi everyone. My name is Darcy. I'm a nature campaigner at Conservation Council SA. And I'll be speaking in support of motion 11.1 today. So yeah, I speak as a campaigner from Conservation Council SA. We represent over 60 member groups, which includes over 19,000 representatives across the state. I also speak on behalf of thousands of South Australian community members who have attended some of our council events in opposition of, in particular, Santos's promotion and advertising across the state. I also speak as a young 25-year-old woman who's very concerned about climate and like many young people around me. And I grew up in the Adelaide Hills in Bridgewater until I was about 18. I moved. So I spoke to this chamber in February when a very similar couple of motions were brought forward. And since then, there has been a lot of progression across institutions and government regarding fossil fuel promotion and advertising. I'd like to speak to that. In March this year, SA's largest council by population, City of Alcapringa Council, voted in favour of a motion to ban fossil fuel promotion and advertising on council property. That means that 1 in 5 South Australians now live in a council with fossil fuel sponsorship banned. We may have also seen in the news Adelaide University is considering dropping Santos signage from campus due to student and staff concerns. And there's already a petition which has been going around for a month that already has over 500 petitions signed. Also in the Australian Capital Territory, obviously this is at state level, but interesting to note, they've banned fossil fuel sponsorship in schools, but also at a territory level, and they're currently working out a plan on how that falls into place, and I think that'd be a great blueprint for our state. In April this year, amongst the Santos AGM, there were First Nations folk from the front lines of Santos's gas expansion plans and projects who flew all the way to Adelaide to voice their concerns regarding their sponsorship, their expansions on their land. This included in the Northern Territory, New South Wales, Northern Territory on Garawa land, New South Wales in Gomeroi land, and also people flew internationally from Papua New Guinea. I sat in a room with these people alongside advisors of the Premier, as well as the Minister for Climate, Energy and Tourism, Emily Burke. And while they voiced their concerns to these ministers' advisors regarding the extensions, and I'm here to basically relay that concern on for Santos and their expansions on their land. They've been advocating against Santos for a very long time. And they, in that room, voiced their concerns and also suggested to state government to put a ban on Santos promotion or fossil fuel promotion within government managed events. Now, I think that this letter that will be brought forward tonight. would be a great nudge for state government to move in the right direction and follow suit with the ACT. So I think this would be a great step for local council to push. And I'd also like to make comment to not a motion that's been brought forward tonight, but one that could be brought forward again in future regarding a fossil fuel promotion and advertising ban within local council property. I think that I really urge councillors to consider bringing forward that motion again and to consider amending it slightly to for it to be on new contracts. I think that that would allow ample time and consideration to think about logistics and relationships within these contracts that I believe that there was concerns for last time. And yeah, I'll finish up in a sec, but council elections are coming up this November. I know you're all aware of that. And I'd just like to remind you that polling is showing that Australian voters are consistently voting for representatives that are consistently voting and making change regarding climate issues. So yes, urge you to all vote in support tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out to share your thoughts. Given that took the full 5 minutes and we don't have anyone else wishing.
Point of order.
Yes. Okay, what's your point of order?
Point of order is in regard to the first public forum speaker. I would like to move the motion without notice in regard to that. It's the appropriate time now, or is it not on the agenda?
You did circulate a motion without notice to me in relation to that. I've had a chat to governance and also Ms. Riddle and determined that that should be considered a motion on notice. Whilst it's considering a report and not directly rescinding the motion, due to the level of community interest and as Mr. Tate talked about earlier, the transparency, giving community the opportunity to feed into that decision, I think is important. So if you're going to have that conversation again, I'm more than happy to facilitate that, but it should come through a motion.
Motion.
Yes, correct. Okay, so we are finished with the public forum. There are no presentations, so no questions on those. We do have one motion on notice that was adjourned. Given that we last spoke about this in February, I'd like to see leave the meeting to reset the debate. So that will give us the opportunity to speak again if they had already spoken, particularly given that we had a workshop on this matter. Do I have leave to reset the debate? Just by show of hands, it's fine. Thanks. So in that original motion, we had the mover, Councillor Grant, and secondly, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Boyd is not here, but I'll pass it to Councillor Grant to introduce him. Yeah, that's nice. So sorry, you have me on the
Yeah. Upstairs.
Okay, so Councillor Grant, over to you to move your motion again and speak to it.
Okay, so am I going to have to find a seconder?
Councillor Lunge, you need to redeclare your compliance.
Okay, so in relation to this item, I'm currently undertaking a contract with SA Lawyer who have recently been announced by the government as being decorporatised and turned into the SA Gas and Water Trust, which will oversee a contract with Santos for the South Australian Strategic Gas Reserve. There may be a perception that I have a conflict on this item. However, this is quite a stretch as the decorporatisation has not yet occurred and I'm only a temporary contractor and I would not have a gain or loss as a result of the outcomes of this motion. So I'll stay in the chamber and participate in debate and vote.
Thank you, Councillor Lunge. So Councillor Grant, if you wish to speak to your item.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mayor. So as a recap, this was a motion brought in February, which was adjourned for the purpose of having a workshop. I have all the elected members have found the workshops valuable because that enables staff to create a draft letter which addresses these points. So the essential part of the argument is while this council is extremely supportive of Tour Down Under as an incredible show of sporting excellence and a way of showcasing the beautiful Adelaide Hills, the fact that to all intents and purposes, it appears the state government is not interested in finding a sponsor for that event, more in keeping with the clean and green image of our council and the principles that we abide by, and that is sustainability and maintaining the beautiful countryside and prairie landscape that we have, and the fact that fossil fuel companies such as Santos, by its very nature in contributing to climate change, is contributing to the extreme weather events, making this event more difficult to hold. And in fact, some stages have been cancelled in the past because of extreme weather events. So the motion I've put it there in writing, I'm just wondering, Mayor, with your indulgence, if I could add an extra point, which members may find worthwhile, and that is that council urges the state government to find a returning sponsor. So what this is about, of course, isn't about the Tour Down Under, it's about the fact that the state government is giving imprimatur to a fossil fuel company rather than to any other alliance sponsor that may well be more appropriate. And in closing, I just want to remind people of the effect on the Adelaide Hills of events such as the Black Summer bushfires, which burnt hundreds of buildings in the Adelaide Hills, the massive East Coast flooding events. Attended both of those in the CFS and the SCS. And this is really about ethics in sponsorship. We no longer tolerate tobacco and alcohol advertising in inappropriate spaces where it's going to influence other people, gambling advertising likewise, and climate change inducing companies fall in the same category. So I seek a seconder for this motion. I have members of this chamber have had time to reflect and consider whether this is an important factor for all of us, because I certainly think it is, and I have the chamber support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Grant. I did have a chat to Ms Riddle. Because the motion is still moved and seconded, I'll just reset the debate. So in order to add that additional point, you need to seek leave in the meeting for a variation. However, Councillor Boyd is not here and she's the seconder, which means that process cannot occur. So at this point, the motion is as what's on the agenda.
Can I clarify?
But someone else could.
Yes.
That motion is on the board, we debated and voted down, and there is actually the adjourn motion according to the minutes is quite different wording. Yeah, I think that's the right way.
Recommendations in the agenda.
Yeah, that you're right.
So it's in the agenda item, yeah, so you're not debating that one.
You're right, yeah.
All right.
Okay, just sorry, yeah, just to clarify. Is it possible to put up the words there? Debate? Because we can't do it.
Yes.
Just cut and paste it from the.
So it's actually in the body.
Please.
In the actual motion.
Yes, that's it. 1-5. So.
So don't take 15.
Thank you.
I can see that. It's just not here.
Let's just see what.
Okay, if we just get everyone's attention, back to the meeting, please. So the correct wording, that Councillor Grant was speaking to is now on the screen. We did have a secretary with Councillor Boyd, she's not here, so I'll now open. So,
Could we make that a bit bigger, please?
well, it's on page 15 and 16 of the agenda,
Okay.
so it's the same as.
I just didn't know.
Across. So would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to propose a variation to this, that governance.
Yeah, just based on what Ms Riddle said a few minutes ago, because the second was not here, we actually can't do that. So what you could do is move an amendment instead. It's not how we do it. So, yeah, it's which. Okay, so it would be a separate motion. So based on. Right. So we can discuss what's on the floor at the moment. If that's voted down, then you can look to move that alternate wording. Okay. Okay, would anyone else like to speak to this item? Councillor Herman.
I think it might be a variation.
We'll see. Well, we can't move a variation because Councillor Boyd is on here. You can move an amendment.
Well,
Sorry, it's a technical thing. but-
right, well, I'll move the amendment.
Yes, so what's your amendment?
Residents that I've spoken to cannot support, expressing concern that it is deeply disappointing. No one, and I spoke to about 20
So
people,
just what's your amendment and you can speak.
delete the word deeply.
Okay.
So I think that's, I can speak to it. I spoke to about 20 people. They're quite relaxed about, two of them, they're quite relaxed about Dangle sponsoring it. So I couldn't find any disappointment, leave alone any deeply disappointment in that group of people I spoke to. So my amendment would be to delete the word deeply. Yeah.
Okay. So do we have a seconder for the amendment? Okay, given there is no seconder, your amendment is lapsed, so we'll go back to the original motion. Do we have anyone who would like to speak to the original motion? Yeah, Councillor
If I
McDonald.
was to amend,
Yes,
add something, can't add anything, remove
well, it
it.
depends what your amendment is, but just, yeah, so if you would amend.
Yeah. Could we then pass it?
Yeah, so basically with an amendment, it's put, like, you can move an amendment if it fits within the legislation, seek a seconder. If that amendment is supported, then the motion becomes amended, so it includes that change, and then we go back to that and vote on the final motion at the end. So you can propose your amendment, and I can determine whether it be accepted.
Can I add that in the letter to. Yeah, it'd be an addition of the sixth point
Yeah,
to ask that the state government working with the CDUs actively seek another sponsor.
being told that's not an amendment. So you could move it as a separate motion after, so we can decide on this current motion. And then you can move that as a standalone motion in relation to this item, so essentially a second decision. That's what you want to do.
Let's get it from this through.
Yeah, councillor Officer.
Thank you. Now, we've recently, the council considered some things in relation to the sandbox and the tour down under. Now, that's all out of confidence now, isn't it? All about
What the things you're talking about,
the aspects to the race for 2027.
No, I don't think that's public yet.
It's not public?
No,
Okay.
they normally release that around the
Okay.
time until.
But I didn't say anything out of ordinary, but not in breach of confidence. That's hence my question. My question is, given the council's current position in relation to the tour down under and Sandbox sponsorship, should this motion get up, how does that impact on the decisions that we've made concerning the event previously? We support it previously. We've passed budget measures, passed motions of support for tour down under. How does this impact, if any, on our current position as a council?
It wouldn't, because we're just writing to the Premier to express those points. So essentially, the motion is stating that we write to the Premier and the Minister for Environment, Climate and Water as follows, and we outline those points, but we're not making a definitive decision that we no longer support that event.
Thank you.
That's another process. Can we vote that down and then bring it?
You can vote whatever you like. So yes, you can vote to support this, and you can vote to support this and just move a standalone point after. And they'd be two distinctly separate items, but so you don't need to vote this down to move something else. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Blair.
Thank you, Mayor. As many people are aware of my view towards some of this, I find there's wording in this that I would question. Wording like climate science warns that January temperatures will continue rising and threaten the delivery. I've actually asked Advent how many times the tour down under has actually been changed in regards to the January temperatures, of which they're unable to give me a response at this time. I find it also deeply disappointing that we're going to pick on Santos, who is such a huge contributor to this state in terms of income to this state, in terms of people want hospitals, people want schools, and businesses like Santos are the ones that keep providing those, keep paying the bills. I also have serious concerns of what this might actually be, what could happen to the Adelaide Hills Council in terms of staging tour down under events in the Adelaide Hills Council. Further to what Councillor Osterstock said, of which we can't disclose, but we are a council who achieves constantly start and finish sections in that weekly, or well, it's even longer now, it's a women's event as well, that we are very beneficial to that. We quite happily want to rake in the tourism, rake in the exposure and everything that the tour down under brings. And yet, want to possibly jeopardise that by trying to say, oh, I'm like coal, oil or gas company being part of it. Now, I think it was probably expressed to us as a council that Santos has had quite a long contract and a very substantial contract with government in running the TDU. And it's not saying that the government would not support Santos running it, but they don't really sound like there's someone else who's going to come and front up with the sort of cash that Santos is doing. I do also question when you try to pit this against tobacco advertising and gambling advertising, that Santos or coal oil gas companies sit in the same thing. I know myself, and I've expressed it in this chamber before, that I can survive without cigarettes. I have for 36 years. I don't need to be gambling, but without coal, oil or gas, well, we can forget our electric vehicles and we can build some horse stables out the back of the council chambers instead out of timber. We won't have to worry about the bitumen roads and the footpaths that our residents in the last meeting are asking for. Well, they won't be bitumised, they'll be gravel at the best. And everything else that coal, oil and gas provides for this council. I think we're just overstepping the mark in what we're trying to achieve in this, and I would have preferred that we could have moved with a variation that was open with the flag. But I think the wording in this is way over the top, and we could shoot ourselves in the foot very much with the state government in not just the TDU, but in many other issues that the council actually has on its desk at the moment in regards to needing state government approvals.
Thanks, Councillor Blago. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Parker.
Thank you. I actually broadly support this. And I think other councils have sent a similar message to the state government around this. I think all we're suggesting is that it might be a good idea moving forward for the state government to look for a different supporter, given climate change and the results of climate change. Also, given the fact that we as a council have declared a climate emergency, we live in an area that has been recently designated extreme bushfire risk. And I think I agree with the deputy earlier. If you have a look at where the mindset of younger people is heading, it is in this direction. I see this in my own children. I see it in the people around me where I live. The Adelaide Hills has always been a very green council, and a lot of people who move to the Adelaide Hills do so because of the beautiful environment. And I think it's really hard because we live in an environment in a society at the moment where we just demonise something. It's like, oh my God, Santos, they're all bad. But Santos, like all energy companies, are contributing to the renewable shift. They are researching and contributing. But I think this does send a very clear message to the state government that this is what our constituents broadly think. It doesn't necessarily affect the delivery. It's still going to run the tour down under. Santos will probably still sponsor. It's just sending a message that this is what a number of our constituents think. So for that reason, I support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Parker. Anyone else? Councillor Alcester.
Just a question. Has Adelaide Hills Council ever conducted a survey of its residents as to whether or not the residents are happy with Santos acting as the major sponsor of Tour Down Under, and that being the case, whether they're comfortable with the Adelaide Hills Council continuing to host Tour Down Under legs?
Not that I'm aware of.
So we really don't do that.
You definitely have. Speak? No, because you tried to move it. I could see it leaving the meeting if you'd like to contribute. So can I leave the meeting for Councillor Herman to contribute to think? Yeah, leave this grant.
Just briefly.
Just briefly. I'll be Councillor Grant, just briefly. I made my comments earlier when I tried to move, at least I'm deeply disappointed. Now, council officers, I've said, has any surveys been done? The people that either benefit or disbenefit? The answer is no. My survey, I have to say, was done at the football club. Mainly like, and they like the Tour Down Under, and I had no objection whatsoever with his name, Georgiopoulos Tour Down Under, or Daniel Tour Down Under. They had no objection to Santos. The big companies have the big bucks, and when the SATC came and addressed the council, I think the representative said something, there aren't too many companies in South Australia that put in the big bucks that Santos put in. So apart from the objection to deeply, I think I represent at least some of the people through my survey, and I can't support it that's coming forward.
It's Councillor Herbert. Would anyone else like to speak? Yeah.
Just ask a question, so around later. Who has already spoken?
So left we have Councillor McDonald, Councillor Mudge, Councillor Trescothy, Councillor Austin.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mudge.
Yeah, I'm going to try this again. I'd like to move an amendment of the lead. Speak to that. Point of authority, that's okay. I believe the motion will still make sense. It's just, and while I support the sentiment of this motion, I have difficulty singling out and attacking the current TVU's major sponsor, Santos. I think it is wrong to single out Santos, given the many industrial organisations in the world that generate and contribute to greenhouse gas emissions, and we are all transitioning to a net zero future. Santos is an Adelaide founded and headquartered company with a global footprint, with a strong commitment to the South Australian community. It's estimated to employ about 2,500 office staff in South Australia and is by far the biggest company headquartered in Adelaide. Santos actually has quite ambitious targets to reduce its carbon footprint, and gas will play its part in the transition to a clean energy future. While there might be some that claim Santos sponsorship of the TVU as part of campaign of greenwashing, I know a recent decision from the federal court in February this year where Santos was cleared of charges of greenwashing in relation to its annual reports. The Federal Court of Australia fully dismissed greenwashing claims against Santos, ruling that its long-term net zero roadmaps and description of natural gas as a clean transition fuel were legally sound, honest and backed by reasonable internal grounds and robust corporate governance. Finally, it's clear that Adelaide Hills Council passing a resolution and writing a letter with Santos specifically singled out will not change the opinion of either SATC or the state government in regards to the TDU. I'm not disputing that we need as a global community to head towards a net zero future. I just don't think that targeting a single SA headquartered firm for sponsorship of a sporting event is the way to do it. So, an amendment.
So do I have a seconder for the amendment? It must be someone who's not spoken. Councillor Woolcott, so you'd like to speak to the amendment?
To speak to just the amendment?
Yes.
I support it, absolutely. So can I speak to the motion? No, okay. I agree with councillor Mudge that singling out one particular company who's the biggest company in South Australia actually really puts us at risk of not of the Tour Down Under not being held in this council area in future. Additionally, gas is a key component of the energy transition. We transition to renewables until our technology moves is further advanced. We need gas as a firming agent and for our industry as well. And I absolutely agree with removing number 3. So I support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Okay, so I know that mover and a seconder to the amendment. Would anyone else like to speak specifically to the amendment? Councillor Grant.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lynch, for this thoughtful amendment. I don't agree with this. We're not singling out Santos. The state government singled out Santos and said this is a company we want bashed with this event. Santos is much as it's involved in the transition to renewables. It's opened up gas fields that will be functioning decades after our net zero target in 2050. That's the Labor government target. How is that consistent? It's not. We have to name Santos because Santos is sponsor of the TDU. If it was another company, we'd single them out. If it was Benson and Hedges, we'd single them out. There's a reason to single them out because the state government is parading them as a company that's really this event. I don't think it is.
Would anyone else like to speak to the amendment? Councillor McDonald.
I agree with Councillor Grant. I think that it's not necessarily about Santos. I just want it to be the sponsor. If there's anyone else, we can single them out as well. I think that it is a risk I am willing to take with the EU, but I still don't think that based on what our council offers, that they would completely scratch us out if we were to move something like this.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Would anyone else like to speak to the amendment? So there's no right of reply to the amendment, so I'll put the amendment. All those in favour indicate. Those against? I'll try your against, because you have to vote.
I know, sure.
Okay, I'll just do it once more. So those that wish to support the amendment, please indicate. Those against? So the amendment is carried. So we now have the motion as amended, that being that it's removed from through. So would anyone who has not spoken to the motion or moved or seconded an amendment like to speak? Councillor Christopher, or wait not.
In general, I agree with this motion, and I think to comment on Councillor Gallagher earlier, I think Santos, I don't think we have to worry about Santos losing their positions, but I think it's important for us just to keep them in check because they do hold a lot of favour with the government, both sides of government, and I think it's important for the local hills to point out that we're wary of greenwashing, and I just think it's important for us to have a position on this because it may not actually change the outcome. As Santos is a big company, they're not going to feel overly threatened by the council, but I do think it's important to have a position because it's that's one way to
Thanks. So Councillor Stock or Councillor McDonald, you're the last two that can speak to the item if you wish to.
Point two of the motion, highlighting the climate science awareness. Has that been, where has that come from? Has the administration commented on that? I can't find that in the report.
No, I don't think they specifically commented on that. However, I personally say that the science is really unequivocal in relation to the projections and the direction of temperatures.
I just consulting ChatGPT. Concurs with your.
All right, no one else wishes to speak. I'll go back to Councillor Grant for your right reply.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all elected members for their contribution. It's a worthwhile discussion. And I'll touch on a couple of points. Firstly, Councillor Gallagher touched on the contribution to the economy of oil and gas companies. There's no doubt about that at all. We're not living in an ivory tower here. I worked in the mining industry when I was young. I worked out at Danville when the North West Shelf project got started. I'm not oblivious to the role of these companies in our economy. No one is. But it has to be said, these companies do pay pathetically little in tax and royalties, or to Australia's social capital. They perform a role, but they take huge amounts of resources and they charge us world standard prices for our own resources. But the arguments would apply to anything else, gambling, tobacco, or alcohol, really. They don't do a social, they do more social harm than good. There's also mention of the sort of cash that Santos provides. We don't know what sort of cash Santos provides. That's part of the problem. It's not transparent. We don't know if it's a lot or a little, whether they get the gift of their name on the banner in large letters cheaply, or whether they do pay the $50. The state government keeps it secret, so we don't know. Again, people have mentioned gas being necessary to transition to a net zero. Well, it is, but opening up new gas fields that will be going for the next 50 years doesn't serve that purpose. I mean, do the mathematics. This motion, and I must say I'm deeply disappointed that this is such a contentious motion, because this is just about the branding of the Adelaide Hills. This is a watershed. It's a agrarian region. That's the basis of the Adelaide Hills area. It's not a population growth centre. It's not an industrial centre. We're talking about branding of our region, and I think that does represent what residents of this region want, and we've discussed it many times before in different ways. We're not unrealistic about how the world works, but we do want to represent our region for what it is, and that's an exceptional area of clean and green production. And I just don't think there's a place for Santos, which isn't part of our local economy in any real sense. They shouldn't be here, so I hope other members will support this motion.
The debate closed. All those in favour, please indicate. Those against? Motion is carried.
Just a point of order there, the draft letter, we didn't approve that because that does contain that paragraph.
Yeah, so I think the administration indicated to you it wasn't necessary to explicitly reference the appendix, and I think given that there's been that change, that part of the letter will need to be taken.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
No other motions in relation to this item? Councillor McDonald? This is your motion?
Yeah.
So what is your motion?
I move that we add to our letter.
If you want to propose some wording, I can consider whether to accept it as a motion without notice now.
Yeah.
Yep. So what's your wording?
That we include in our letter to the state government that we encourage them to seek either alternative or additional sponsors for the EU that are more eco-friendly.
Okay, so I'm happy to accept that as a motion without notice. Do you wish to speak to that?
I think that this puts a bit of action on the other side as well. We're not just acknowledging something, we're actually asking them to do something and consider a little bit more seriously what the other options might be. If we don't know specifically what amount of money is being given, then we can't really say, oh, another company would be able to do that. If that is a possibility or not. If it isn't, then an additional sponsor would be a step forward.
Okay, thanks. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Parker, do you wish to speak to the item?
No, it's pretty self-explanatory.
But anyone else? Yes, councillor Stark.
The way I read that is that we are declaring that the current sponsor, Santos, is not eco-friendly. I don't think that the Santos is not eco-friendly. I know it's an oil and gas producer.
You're debating.
Wrong.
I mean, there is the word there more, so that's not saying explicitly saying Santos is not. But that if council were to endorse this, part of that letter would suggest to consider seeking sponsorship from businesses that are already there. Anyone else like to speak to the item? Yes, councillor Grant and councillor Walker.
You just briefly, and for tidiness, perhaps that needs to refer to the letter in item 11.1, just so that someone observing it knows what's going on. Yeah, other than that, yeah, I think this is a good addition. We had representatives from the Tour Down Under saying, you've got alternative sponsors, bring them to us. I think that's disingenuous. Yeah, if they want us to seek sponsors or tell us how much the sponsorship is, and the tender can be put out. I think the onus is on the state government to do this, not to just try and fault people glibly off saying, well, can you find a sponsor? I'm sure there's hundreds of companies that would love to be associated with this event. It's an incredible event. So yeah, I thank Councillor McDonald for this motion, and I think it's a worthy addition.
Thanks, councillor. Now, councillor Walker, you wish to speak?
Sponsors. First of all, I think wording is incorrect because Santos is the key sponsor, so you can't have additional key sponsors for an event like that. So that actually doesn't really make any sense. And to just be alternative sponsor would, but you can't have two. I don't know how feasible it is for them to have. Santos would share, or someone that would share the sponsorship, like it's the major part.
My read of that word is that Santos is the key sponsor, but there are many sponsors in the Tour Down Under. That doesn't reference the key sponsor. So that's saying in general, sponsors of the TDU, I see as being a bit different. Obviously, a key sponsor is Santos, but it's not explicitly limiting it to them. If it said,
Okay.
sorry, I'm Jeanette Brown, I just don't have the screen in front of me like normal. That the state government is encouraging them to seek an alternative or additional key sponsor, then it would be a problem, but the way that's the word is like,
Okay.
understanding the point.
Yeah, and then eco-friendly also is completely ambiguous, in my opinion. Santos could argue quite rightly about the amount of money that they invest. Sorry, no, but I feel I don't feel like the wording is ambiguous. We need to tighten it up.
So if you can think of more appropriate wording, you can suggest that I can see leave for a variation.
I'm happy. Can I just can I think, because I'm slow thinker? And somebody else speak.
Councillor, are you speaking or you want to suggest?
I'll speak. Yeah, I think the intent is there, I believe in that, but I think it don't agree that we, I don't know who the royal we is. Council's a singular thing, so it's the council can't hear we. So I'd rather see the CEO or the council in its level. It's just grammatical stuff. So if someone would like to tidy up the grammar better than.
So instead of we, state council.
And then we appears against elsewhere. Not good English.
That is change. Yeah.
Please.
Yes. Yeah, but anyone else like speak to the item? Councillor Parkin, there's 7 minutes.
All right. Yeah. I'm just going to make a quick comment, and that is that Santos stands for South Australian and Northern Territory Oil Research. It is at its core and its heart an oil exploration company. That's what it does. And so irrespective of its move to renewables and toward renewables, and a lot of energy companies are moving toward renewables, and that is a great thing. But its branding and its very name is still South Australian Northern Territory Oil Research. It's an oil exploration company. And so there's an oil exploration company being associated with the Adelaide Hills, which is clean, green, and beautiful. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with encouraging the state government to look for something that is more, you know, eco-friendly. Whether or not they do it is up to them, but, you know, at least we're suggesting that. And so I can't see that. So that's my 2 cents.
Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Blair.
Question, who determines whether a business is eco-friendly?
Who determines whether the business is eco-friendly? Well, I guess if we were to write that letter and the state government were to, I mean, in point 4 of the previous motion, it already says to request the state government incorporate sustainability and environmental responsibility criteria, including reducing carbon emissions into the sponsorship evaluation process of all major state supported events, aligning with South Australia's climate and net zero emissions objectives. So I would say that if we were to endorse that, how you would quantify or have criteria around what is eco-friendly, it would be with respect to aspects like that. It would be for us to decide. It would be some process that they go through, and we're saying we'd like you to consider that and choose station. It's not going to be fair. I think Councillor Woodcock might have voting.
I think I might. So that do, for the TDU that do not promote the burning of coal, oil and gas or something along those lines. So rather than focusing on the eco-friendly portion, focus on the coal, oil or gas. Because essentially you could have a variety of companies that are involved that would, you know, could people could say are ecologically or environmentally sustainable or responsible. Yeah.
Right, Councillor McDonald, are you happy with that variation? Councillor Park, are you happy?
Yeah.
So I'd like to seek leave in the meeting to support that variation. I need 2/3 for you to indicate that you're in. Yep, okay, so leave is granted. So the motion is as varied. Now we've had Councillor McDonald, Parkin and Grant speak to the item. Would anyone else like to speak to the matter? Okay, Councillor McDonald, right if you like. Okay, with the debate closed, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please indicate. Those against? That motion is carried. Okay, we will move on to administration reports. People who may come for that particular item, there's no obligation to stay for the entire meeting, so if you have other things you'd like to do, you may as well.
You don't want to stay?
So you're going to take that's all really
What about the same relationship?
Watch.
Okay. I don't know.
All right. Keep the meeting moving. So we're up to what is a very important item for us, which is the annual business plan and budget to go out to consultation. Mr. Lewis, do you have any new or additional information you'd like to provide the chamber?
There's one thing I've just been asked to just clarify. There are a number of items, we list sections, which we list in the summary section of the report, that were brought to council for adoption. That refers to the adoption of the final annual business plan. It's not for this meeting when we adopt the draft. Other than that, we're not going to add.
Someone like to move something in relation to this item? Councillor March, but would you like to move?
I'd like to move the motion as printed.
Would you like to speak to the item?
Yeah, just briefly. Thank you. First of all, thank you to all the staff who contributed to getting this draft budget to this point. I know it's been a huge effort behind the scenes. Probably had more workshops than we might have on previous budgets, which is good because I was sick for the first one. An opportunity to contribute to the second workshop. So I support both annual business plan and budget for consultation. I'll be interested in how the proposed rate rise of the CPI plus 3%, which is approximately 7.6%, amounting to approximately $223 for the average residential properties received by the community. See what the feedback is on that one. I believe that given the financial circumstances of council at the moment, with a previous underestimation of depreciation requirements to maintain aging assets, it means that we have to raise rates above a pure increase of the CPI or the local government price index to ensure that we continue to remain in a financially sustainable position. An operating deficit of 3.4 million and giving an operating deficit ratio of -5%. It's well outside our target range and the other value that is at the bottom end of what I think we should tolerate. From a financial sustainability perspective, I think it will be important to follow the final approval of this budget when it hopefully comes. With a new update to our long-term financial plan that clearly maps a plan for a return to surplus and continued financial sustainability. And so I think that's really important that we put lots of effort into that and we come up with a clear plan. And I think that will help with the acceptability of this budget. I do understand that it's the view of some elected members that our ratepayers are somewhat insensitive to rate rises, and thus we could increase rates more to slash the deficit. However, I disagree. Just because we don't hear as many people complaining about rises doesn't mean that there are not people out there struggling with their rates as a contribution to the cost of living. Just yesterday, I responded to a ratepayer who is struggling to pay their rate bill and seeking better options for payment plans from council to help them to keep their head above water. We should always be seeking to balance financial sustainability with the ability of our community to bear rate rises, with particular concern for those who are asset rich but income poor and others who are struggling.
Thanks, Councillor March. Councillor Parkin, are you wishing a second?
Yes, I'd like to second, and I'd like to speak just briefly to the motion. Thank you. I agree with Councillor March that we've had a lot of really good and I would call accessible workshops on our budget this year. And it's really helping me understand, I think, really clearly why we have to do what we have to do. I've also been looking at what other councils, some other councils have published their rate rises or what their rates for the next year. 7.6 is not the highest rate published by other councils in Adelaide. It's not the lowest, but it's not the highest. And interestingly, regional councils are the councils which seem to be struggling most with their infrastructure costs. Regional and rural councils, very much like us, have astronomically rising costs when it comes to infrastructure maintenance. And some councils, like Barrie-Barmera Council, I think is particularly struggling, and so they are forced to increase their rates. So I actually think that this rate, 7.6%, it's not going to put a massive dent in our deficit, but it's certainly going to keep us in a position where we are sustainable as we find a way to deal with rising infrastructure costs and rising costs in general in a council which has a low GARP target. So we're not expanding our ratepayer base. We're not we're not, building a lot of new houses, and we can't do that because we provide 80% of Adelaide's drinking water. So we're watershed, we're high bush fire risk, we've got a limited capacity to be able to increase our ratepayer base. So we need to plan very, very carefully for the future. And I think this rate is a good compromise and a good balance. And so I can motion. Thank you.
Councillor Parkin, Councillor Hammond, would like to speak?
Speaking of perhaps the variation, like variation for a state for
Yeah.
right in back to town depends for community consultation, I'd like to insert after that, including the audit and risk committee. Make it quite clear in the resolution, the council is referring the document to the audit and risk committee for comment. And just speaking to that, go back and normal process in previous years.
Just wait a second. Sorry. I mean, if you want to explicitly say that, but have it as a separate sentence at the end, only like after 7.6, you would say consultation will include an audit risk committee, just because it's not one of the requirements of section 1, 2, 3, so it will read properly in that order. So the potential variation would be consultation will include the audit and risk committee, which is a separate sentence. And I just want to see, Councillor Munchie, happy with that variation? It's going to happen anyway. Councillor Parkin?
Yeah.
Okay, just second the meeting, accept that as a variation. Thanks, Leaders Grant.
But if we go back, like this council, it's been the general practice that any budget review and annual budget plan before they come to the council for either consultation or whatever, that they be forwarded to the audit and risk committee, or they see it first, and then they will provide a comment to this meeting and how, as they see it. Now, it's particularly valuable for this group because there are three people from private enterprise on that committee. They take a different view from us internal people. They give an external view of the council's finance, and that's invaluable. Because of the timing, it's unfortunate that we couldn't get the draft budget ready in time for it to be referred to the Audit and Risk Committee. It will go, the Audit and Risk Committee meets on these Wednesday, the 17th, so it will go there next week. Those comments can come back, so I would envisage through the, and be considered with the comments we get from the community. I'd ask the CEO that next year, perhaps start the budget process a month or two early, so that we can get the project correct. As we did the budget review 3 has been referred to the audit risk committee, which meets after next week. We'll comment back to the council. So the timings of the essence of these, the CEO can organise a timetable to achieve that goal. Audit risk committee, then to council. So, but again, I have to say, I have a bit of sympathy for the staff putting this together. There's 12 or 13 people around the table that aren't diverse views, what they wouldn't be. So distilling those views out to come up with a document as we have, I give them credit for that. And we can publish Gary's telephone number for complaints.
Councillor. Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Gallagher.
Just a question.
Yeah.
If in a draft consultation, the residents push back on the rate rise to that extent, what is the usual action by council?
So normally after closing consultation, we'll hold a workshop in relation to what was consultation occurred in terms of the feedback received. Changes have been made in the past with the final endorsed budget relative to what's gone into consultation, particularly if there's strong feedback on a certain project or maybe in this instance, the percentage rate rise. So that can change. It would be up to the elected body as to what those changes might be depending on what we hear.
We'll speak for that. While I'm fully supportive, this needs to get out for consultations, we are behind. But I'm not a supporter of a 7.6% rate rise. Originally, the 1.5 CPI I was comfortable with. But we have workshop this and workshop this and stuff. So now this becomes the figure. Given that I've also seen what other councils have done and even our neighbouring councils, and we're not meant to be really comparing with them, but we are way above the majority of councils that I've seen. That were printed in the advertiser of just last week. $223 for the average property. I hate averages. I think we've already heard that some people are pretty struggling already, and we're just going to burden and burden because we just think that we haven't got a way around it. I think there's still plenty of ways around it in this council to shave some expenditure, and we just don't seem to be willing to do it at all. So I can't support a rate rise of that magnitude.
Yes, Councillor Flanagan, Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, and I like to echo what Councillor Blacko and Councillor Herron have said. I've had two local businesses last week, and a local resident just saying this is going to make things really difficult for them if the 7.6% rise gets up. Two well-loved local businesses who would just be another nail in the coffin for them with things that they're experiencing, just trying to keep their businesses above water at the moment. I don't know what the answer is. I don't claim to know what the answer is, but I agree with Councillor Gladgo's last comments and that there's another way. There's another way to get the outcome that we need, and I don't. This isn't really. Really hope that the community participates in the consultation process, because obviously that if they don't, then we don't know. So that's a little bit on them as well. But for those who do, I hope that we can really take their feedback on and listen to them, and we're here to represent them. That's the whole point of us in this table. So I think whoever participates, whoever's brave enough to voice their concerns, we need to really make sure that we listen to what they say and act on that. So I also do not support a 7.6% rate rise, but I do very much know that this needs to go out of consultation. We need to just figure it out after that.
Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Grove.
Yeah, can I ask a couple of questions,
Yes.
please? Can anyone from the administration please advise when we'll have a finalised business plan? So after consultation, it comes back to finalisation.
I believe the next question is July. I think there's council meeting on July. We expect to bring the final back to
14th of July.
Yeah, thank you. And my second question, I guess, is what's the impact of that on the many projects listed in that annual business plan? Obviously, something in the can't commence, maybe planning can occur, but because this budget does seem late, I'd just like to know what the impact is on the many projects that are going to be waiting for that July date. Can anyone comment on that?
It is a delay in 2 weeks, a loss of 2 weeks, and the uncertainty will, have some impact on capacity, but we have a reduced number of projects that we're running, so I don't believe it should unduly impact on the delivery of what we put into the business plan.
Yeah, thank you.
Just follow up question in relation to that. With the delay in the approval, what financial impact does that have? Happy for you to take on notice if required, just thought of it. The financial impact of obviously us then receiving the rates at a later date, because they don't get issued out and approved. What, the financial impact of
I
that?
believe there shouldn't be any impact if we get it done on the 14th, because I think we can still hit our original dates for issuing the rates. If we slip much beyond the 14th, then we start, I think it's if we run another week or 2 weeks, then it starts to impact. I can't remember the exact figures. At the 14th of July, we shouldn't have any actual financial impact.
Thanks. Would anyone else like to speak to that? That's the first off here.
So for me, I know we're going through a bit of a transition period, and 7.6% is quite a jump, and I do have trouble supporting this, but I will. But I suppose for me, it's more of a short-term and long-term thing that we need to be, and I suppose this is the question to admin, is looking at our costs within council if they're living beyond our means, because I think short-term I could support an increase like this, but if we don't review how much things are costing us and whether we're living within our means, I feel like we could be in the same position next year and the year after, and it just keeps going. So as a short term, I think I can support this, but I think I'd like to see we could look at where we could save money within the budget. I'm not sure exactly where that needs to happen, but to me, the operations budget needs to be getting bigger. So there's a bigger project, but if you don't address it sooner rather than later, then you'll continue down this path. So in summary, short term I can support this, but long term I need to be seeing a real effort on spending.
Would anyone else like? Yes, Councillor Crane.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just following on from Councillor Trescothick's comments, which are good ones. This is a troubling deficit. It's a serious deficit, and which any deficit means we're borrowing to operate. It has to be short term, but also, I guess Councillor Trescothick's comments are similar thought comments we've had in nearly the 8 years I've been here. And we've had a constant refrain that we were struggling to maintain our assets. If you're having trouble maintaining your assets, you've got to stop building new assets or assets that don't pay a return. Some assets pay a return. It might be in social good, it might be in safety, it might be in reducing our operating costs, such as solar panels or efficiencies. But yeah, we've really got to hold back on new big projects that add to our running costs and add to our depreciation costs and our renewal costs, because that's been a refrain from as long as I've been around, is that we had trouble maintaining the assets we've got. The fundamental rule is stop putting in new assets. Unless they're essential or they're going to pay a dividend, as I say. And thankfully we don't hear it too much, but there was always a sentiment that borrowing is good because it provides some sort of intergenerational equity. I've always thought that was a completely fallacious statement. It doesn't inherently do anything. If it's borrowing for an asset that will be going from a generation or two, sure, but not many assets do that. They all need maintenance. So yeah, this is a real wake-up call to constrain the sort of expansions that we do, take on new big projects. Yeah, and there's many projects that have come before us in the 8 years I've been here, which we've said no to, and I'm glad we did, because we've been in a worse state now than we would have been. On the upside, and I forgot to thank staff for their efforts on this, because it's fantastic the work that's gone into it and the amount of consultation that's happened in this chamber, and I hope the community consultation will add to that. But some of the school safety and activation projects, I just think are good. They're reasonably cheap. in the scheme of things. Things like the strategic asset management plan, I think that's going to help set us up in the future for better and more balanced budgets. Once we had that operating surplus target of 2 to 5%, and I still think that should be the target. Minus, what is it, 3%? Nowhere near. But anyway, I support this. I'll be interested in seeing the community response to that rate rise. I do think that's an alarming rate rise. But anyway, thank you to the staff for the effort they've put into this.
Thanks, Councillor Grant. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Walcott.
Question about the process of public consultation around the kinds of questions that are asked about the budget, and then from then the response and how we consider it and how we then react to it. I'm just not sure of the process. I'd like some clarity around that, because our survey is only as good as questions that we're asking, and is it being pitched by the administration to be supportive of this, rather than, like, I'd just like to understand how that all sits.
Yeah, so I can't speak to the administration answer in a moment. Again, I guess about the possible questions that will be posed and what might be answered, but outside of that, once we get that feedback, we'll be going through the workshop process, us giving the administration insight as to whether we're looking to make some changes to the budget. And again, that can be project based. You might get a big theme. Your road place base was an example of that a few years ago, where it wasn't in the budget that went out to consultation, but then due to the magnitude of the feedback from the community, we brought it into the budget, or included the information for the rate funds. But Mr. Lewis, you able to provide any context as to the exact sorts of questions that we asked?
I don't think we're finalised in terms of what we did. The general outline between questions we want to go in. We have projects that have been considered are always significant items, because that gets people's interest. They know the activities we're planning on doing, and with the renewal programs, that's another source of feedback. We will bring rates. That always has to be a question. And KPIs and debt will probably affect quite a lot of comments whether we raise those questions or not. In terms of more detail, I think that's probably the general gist of what we'll do. We'll present the annual business plan, and that's available for people to see and raise whatever questions they have.
And my final question, as part of that, when we present the projects, because we've workshopped it, we understand the reason behind. So, for example, the library planning, and the fact that that is a requirement essentially. Will this kind of information be presented to the public, or are they given kind of a list of projects without any particular context or reasoning behind it? Because I think that always skews their view as well. So I'm just curious about this public consultation process and the actual the relevance of the information that we'll get back, given the questions that are going out.
I'd certainly expect that we will. There's a number of significant projects which we will need to give more information on to inform the debate.
So you will. And sorry, last question, do we see that before it goes out or not? Just goes out?
Not.
There's a question. The draft budget is based on, we'll say 7.6%, which is 4.6 plus 3. The last CPI, I think, is dropped down to 4.2. We advise Stephen up, so 4.2, which means 0.3%, small amount.
So your questions would
So the question will be, are we dropping our expenditure as well? So the deficit stays less money income, so less expenditure.
I mean, ultimately it's a council decision, but I would say based on the report, we're saying CPI plus 3. We get to the time of endorsing the budget, CPI is different to 4.6%. It would be that value plus 3. But that would be absolutely
So the expenditure will drop as well.
So we have said in the report in a few places there with the late running, well, the advantage of having a late running process is that we will see a more an inflation figure closer to the end of the year. And we have said right from the beginning, and it's written a number of times, that we will bring back to the chamber the latest inflation figures. And the idea of CPI plus 1.5 plus 1.5 is the CPI covers the pressure that will exist in our cost base. If that pressure is lower, then we will put up rates by less. If CPI was 1%, then we would need to cover a 1% increase in costs, not a 4.6%. We're aware that for the amount of uncertainty in the world at the moment, there was a fear that that figure could be higher, and we could be coming back for the higher rate, which is certainly not something we want to do. But we have said repeatedly that we will look at the latest inflation figure we have, and we'll bring that back to council. Hopefully at a consultation, or at a consultation meeting, and then again in the final figures. We just need to cover the genuine pressure that's in the cost base, not something else.
Yeah, anyone else like to speak to the item?
I will speak to the item. I echo some of the commentary from around the room about how large that rate rise is. I think before we've said that our residents don't really feel the impact of it. There hasn't been bite back, but I feel like we're in very different economic times. With the most recent federal budget that's been handed down, I think that we will see significant reaction to a rise of that magnitude, and that it really will impact our ratepayers, both businesses and individuals. And so I am concerned about that. I'm concerned about the sustainability budget overall. I don't think that we look at things from a commercial lens in any way, shape or form, kind of throw money at things rather than look at how we can value add and maximise and optimise our assets and make them work for us rather than simply rates. And then kind of having that as our only income source. I don't think that it should be, that it can be. So I would like to see a different mindset moving forward about how we do things, because I think we're kind of stuck in this cycle, and that it's just going down a whirlpool of deficit and debt, and I don't see an end to it. Even when we're increasing rates by this magnitude, we've still got a deficit that I just think is I can't even wrap my head around how we're in a position like that. So I really do look forward to the public consultation piece. I would like to understand further the questions that will be asked, because I really do. I would like to make sure that they are framed in a way that is open and transparent and isn't geared to one particular outcome or response. I think we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if that was the case. And that's all I'd like to say.
Anyone else like to speak to the item? I reply, thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, look, one thing I forgot to mention is I did ask a bunch of questions at the start before tonight, and they answered them, so thank you for that. I do echo Councillor Herman's comments. I think it's regrettable it hasn't gone to the order when it comes to us, and I think that's this should be the exception. It should come through the work committee first before it comes to us to make it have their view of it. I think really the key, and look, I'm sort of, I tend to agree with everyone in the room basically spoken on this one. But I think really the key is the long-term financial plan, and looking at some potential methods of reducing that deficit. And I think there are a few things which are on the table at the moment, such as strategic asset management plan that we've talked about before. I think we seriously need to consider service reviews of all the services that we take. And one which has even been mentioned, Councillor Woolcock for mentioning it, we need to be looking for alternative sources of incomes. I think this council is a bit too risk averse, and we need to be a little bit more entrepreneurial and look at potentially having things, enterprises, assets that actually make us money instead of cost us money all the time. And we'll make a comment about consultation. In the past, we have changed our rates right at the last minute as we approved them. basically. So we can respond to consultation. And so it's not unprecedented in this council in my time for that to happen. I will make a comment about generation of electricity. I actually think that's a good thing to do. Because otherwise, if you're building a long-term asset, you're going to have to actually fund it up front, basically. And it is best practice within the sector, and it is LGA recommendations for long-term assets to build that. So yeah, look, I recommend the motion. Interested in seeing what comes out.
Okay, it's debate closed. All those in favour indicate. That's carried unanimously. Move on to item 12.2, the community engagement framework. Mr. Lewis, do you have any new additional information you'd like to provide?
No.
Someone like to move something in relation to this item? Councillor Ossister,
As printed.
wish to speak to the
No,
item?
thank you.
Someone else? Yes, councillor Grant, if it was second, you wish to speak to the item?
Yeah, just briefly, look, thank you again to staff. I think this, yeah, I really like this. This is really what goes to the heart of local government. The fact that of all the levels of government, we're by far the closest to the community. And this is really leaning into that important principle. And the way it articulates those principles, I think are fantastic. Talking about clear, timely and accessible communications, managing community expectations is so important, as we know. Early engagement, transparency, closing the loop, showing how input hits the mark and influences our decisions. All of these are really important in maintaining trust in our system of government. They're not relevant statements. I think they're crucial to what we do. I think they're really close to the heart of what this is all about. So yeah, I think this is a fantastic framework. There was some feedback from the community. It is hard to get community engagement. And that's something we'll explore. So yeah, I think the motion.
Would anyone else like to speak to the item? Councillor Ossister, no need for right reply. Debate closed. All those in favour indicate. That's carried unanimously. Move on to item 12.3, community engagement policy. Mr. Lewis, any new information to provide?
No.
Someone like to move something in relation to that? Councillor Moran, do you wish to speak to the item?
On similar lines, yeah, I just think this is really good to articulate, to remind us how, the good way to do this engagement, the timely way to do it. It's so important. Again, there's only one submission on the policy like this, but it's probably pretty dry for the members of the public. Anyway, yeah, I support this and thank you to staff for all their work.
Have a seconder? Councillor Trescothick, you wish to speak to the item? No. Anyone want to debate? No need for right reply. I'll put the motion. All those in favour indicate. That is carried unanimously. Move on to item 12.4, disability access and inclusion plan. Ms. Charlton, do you have any new information to provide?
Just minor, some minor buffers which councillor and Vladimir hopefully picked up, sort of others amongst those, and there's some children and don't want, they'll be fixed under delegation and once published as soon.
Would someone like to move something in relation to this? Councillor Parkin, do you wish to speak to the item? No. So Brian, we're having a second. Do you wish to speak?
It just briefly, look, it's good to see feedback from service providers, peak bodies, and other access included advisors. I think that's great. I hope that the input was worthwhile. But, yeah, thank you for starting again for this effort.
Does anyone else wish to speak? I need for the right to reply then. Put vote, all those in favour indicate. That is carried unanimously. Move on to item 12.5. Now, I know with today's media statement announcement that the desire to potentially push out the elections. Given that we haven't, I had a chat with Ms. River earlier about this, we haven't heard anything from the state government that it is appropriate to continue in relation to this item. There's no need to defer it. If the state government happened to delay elections, that then we could revisit the meeting aspect of it. But there's no reason we can't consider the item tonight. So, CEO, do you have any new information to provide? Someone like to move? Yeah. Councillor Brown, do you wish to speak to it?
No, I think it's self-explanatory.
I have a seconder. Councillor Grant, do you wish to speak to the item?
Oh, we just briefly, yeah, we've got to assume that elections are going to go on as per usual, and if they don't, come back to it.
Does anyone else wish to debate? Councillor Austin.
Just a brief comment. I note that the Attorney General declared that he'll be bringing the issue to Cabinet in the next week or so for a decision.
Debate the piece. You never know.
Yeah.
When I close the debate, just speak.
Councillor Parkin.
Right.
Oh, I just had a question. I saw the headlines, but I didn't actually see what they were proposing in terms of the calendar.
Essentially, EXA wanted to delay the elections, was it 6 months? Yes, by 6 months. Until they get the feedback from the independent review into the issues of the state election.
Yep.
And concern that those issues will come to the surface again if they involve the local council elections now.
I think it's appropriate that we adopt this process, but we'll be meeting once a month. And if there was an election in November, that could set a precedent for new experience of by having a meeting once a month instead of possible. So any decision for the new council can have a look at the experience of once a month.
I agree, councillor. I would say that the start of the term is quite different from the caretaking, but that'll be up to the new elected people. All right, debate closed. All those in favour indicate. That is carried unanimously. So the election signage policy, CEO, do you have any information to provide? Someone like to move something in relation to this, councillor Grimes?
As previously.
Do you wish to speak?
Yeah, I just want to address this in three parts. No, I think so.
Councillor Gallagher, you indicated we're going to second the motion. Do you wish to speak to the other? No, thank you, Mayor. Does anyone wish to contribute to the debate? I'll put the motion then. All those in favour indicate. That is carried unanimously. We have Southern Hills Local Government Association Audit Committee exemption application. CEO, do you have any information on that? Councillor Mudge, you indicated you wish to move the item. Do you wish to speak to it? No. Okay, do we have a
Just a question.
yes, councillor?
I think most councils have adopted audit and risk committees. This one's just called an audit. Committee. Not that they haven't, but I'm just curious as to why it's they don't want to use and risk. Anyway, I could not have it in this, so.
Do I have a second then? Or, yeah, second, yeah, yes. Anyone else wish to speak to the item? Yeah, councillor Parker?
I think it makes sense and it's a continuation of exemption. The Southern Hills Local Government Association really has said one employee. So in terms of expenditure, it's not like a massive association. It's not like a council. It's a continuation of something that they already have and it seems to be functioning just fine. So, motion.
Anyone else like to debate the item? Councillor Mudge, no need for right to reply. I'll put the motion. All those in favour indicate. It's carried unanimously. So we'll move on to item 13.1, response to SCOSA. Mr. Lewis, do you have any information on provide the chamber in relation to this?
An extra point to the resolution from that which was in the agenda. This enables us to do a final review and also to consider some of that feedback we can from members. The intention is not to make any material changes, but if we can make minor changes which reflect an opinion that we've received, we will do so.
Yes, councillor Mudge, wish to speak for you?
Yeah, I'll move and speak to it. Yeah, look, thank you to staff for being fairly considered response to this. I think it's really important that we do make a response and make sure that, we actually get value out of the process, because, my feedback, personal feedback, is that, the sort of response we got from the last time we got reviewed was pretty much a cookie cutter response, basically. It didn't really have much value in it, and we paid something like about $30,000 to get this response. I think, I know just in our budget, we've got about 40,000, 45,000 budgeted, so we want to get as maximum value out of it as we can. So that's why I think it's important that we provide the feedback that they're providing. So I can end the motion.
Councillor Munch, Councillor Parkin, wish to second.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it, but I did actually, don't fall off the chairs and shock everybody. I did read the document and I did actually provide a response. So nobody laughed. But this is actually really interesting, and I think it is potentially Adelaide Hills Council's opportunity to provide some really meaningful input into how we manage the problem of our deficit moving forward, because we're not the only council going through this. We're the only council having to manage spiralling infrastructure costs while not having the capacity to grow our rates base. A lot of regional councils are going through what we're going through. So I did actually end up providing some feedback. And I read also the answers to the questions that Gary is looking at submitting. And I think they're really good. I also think that they feel quite broad, and I think there's potentially an opportunity to give some more specific feedback. What I don't know is how appropriate that would be under the circumstances. But basically, a council rule like the Adelaide Hills is fundamentally constrained by externally imposed planning and environmental controls. So we are doing things for the state that we're not necessarily compensated for. So we can't grow because we provide the state's drinking water, but we're not necessarily compensated for that, but we can't grow our rates benefit. So we're providing something for the state that we're not necessarily, that costs us. And so there's the opportunity to sort of feed that in and have a SCOSA and then the state more generally understand the very specific position that we find ourselves in. We're not necessarily the only council who finds ourselves in this kind of position, but there are certain things that just the Adelaide Hills offer, the broader state, that other councils cannot offer, water being one. So I did put that feedback in. I just did want to ask one question. I know that in the first round of the SCOSA consultation, they consulted with 40 councils. Were we one of the councils that they consulted with?
Answer that one.
No.
Just take that on notice.
And that was when I had the feedback that there is the potential to make the answers to those questions a little bit more specific. Because we have externally imposed land use constraints, which are actually in the state's interest, not just ours. And that there is an opportunity for SCOSA to recognise that. Yeah, I'm happy to forward everyone else the feedback, okay? If that's useful. I just think that this is a great opportunity to really highlight the situation we find ourselves in and have a SCOSA who will decide in the future whether we're sustainable or not. They're providing a framework. I think it's some checkboxes we tick off. This is a really great opportunity for us to provide that feedback.
Thanks, Councillor Parkin. Would anyone else like to contribute to the debate? So, Councillor Munch, right of reply. Okay, with debate closed, all those in favour indicate. That is carried unanimously. We have integrated planning program. Ms. Chapman, generally, would you like to provide in relation to that? Somebody would like to move. That's not much. Do you wish to speak to the item?
Yeah, I think this is excellent outline of a process to, and it's quite a different process, I think, to what we've gone through before for this sort of planning. And I think it's quite, innovative, sort of, the way it's been outlined. And, Assistant Barbo has his fingerprints over it. But I'm sure there are other staff that have contributed to that, but thank you for that, and thank you for taking on board some of the feedback that we gave in previous workshops. And I'm really keen to participate as much as I can in this process. Forward to seeing what it comes up with.
Councillor Mudge, do I have a second in relation to this? Councillor Trescothick, you wish to speak about it?
No,
Anyone else like to contribute to the debate?
Questions, recommendation 3, the reporting aspects of, progress in implementation of it. So, council post phase 1 engagement, etc. And subsequent phases will be progressed through integrated quarterly gateways. Not sure what quarterly gateways mean. Is there any progress report? Am I reading right on it? Is there any method of including that in the quarterly report of any progress on stuff? Keep us up to date.
Quarterly gateways?
Through you, Mayor. We'll be bringing after our progress updates back to council. So they're
Quarterly, the reporting
no,
system.
So there'll be a quarterly report.
yeah, specific for this project, there'll be an agenda item. This project will be able to take. For those gateways.
Does anyone else have a question or wish to speak to the item? No, Councillor Mudge, I should know them for the right. All those in favour of the proposed? It's carried unanimously. There is no correspondence from noting. We have some questions about notice.
Yes. Slow down. 2. First of all, perennial Foreign Road, Buckingham Road and Martin Hill Road, focus report with Dick. Please don't repeat what you said last time.
Depends on the everyday is, councillor.
Very you, Mayor, it'd be good to keep your pressure up directly with DIP, as is the community, but I have been informed that they will have their recommendations post their investigation report by the end of next week.
Right, so would you see a benefit of the urban CFS, which I have an interest, run through that, through the training and reasonable to put pressure on them, or perhaps I'll leave that until you produce the goods next week.
Well, my suggestion is that you apply equal pressure.
Yeah, right, thank you. Second question to the director.
Same topic?
No.
So seventh question was Heathfield survey. And been any rapid strides forward in the decision?
Survey through the
Survey.
you, Mayor, there's been no update, and be assured I will email that to the service.
And I did have a question on notice, and I'll be guided by you, Mick. I thought you may have allowed that motion without notice regarding Australia Day, but that didn't happen. So I did have a question which I have been provided the answers, but I think it'd be useful if they were incorporated into the minutes. The questions were in regard to what costs or what contribution does the council make for recognition of the First Nations people. So the question was, what's council expenditure on First Nations culture, Harmony Day, Nanook Week and other associated events? The director has provided that information for me. I think it's worthwhile that it was in the public forum. I could ask the director that question, see if he could give me an answer, and I would ask.
I mean, you've asked a question without notice. One point I will make, they are two distinctly different matters. Say that you're talking about the exact same thing. One is a decision we've made about whether to hold particular events on the 26th of January. The other one much of a question in relation to actions of reconciliation. So you've asked a question without notice. Sheldon, you're happy to respond, and then the elected body can consider whether they wish to have that incorporated.
So, through you, Mayor, for NAIDOC week, which was held in July 2025, questions around 2025-26 financial year. We spent approximately 3,500 on that event, which included family fun day, workshops and activities in the libraries and community centres. National Reconciliation Week, which was held in May, we spent approximately 2,600, which includes attendance at the National Reconciliation Breakfast and activities in the community centres, including workshops and cultural tours. So a total of about 6,100. Harmony Day, which was held in March, was approximately $1,500 on a number of programs across the community centres and libraries. I would add that Harmony Day is not an event to celebrate First Nations culture. It's a celebration of cultural diversity and multiculturalism, focusing on inclusiveness, respect and sense of belonging for everyone. And this year, community members have opportunities to be involved in activities and learning that celebrated African, Spanish and Japanese cultural activities.
Thank you. So I move that response from the director be incorporated into the minutes. And the reason for that is that I will be bringing on the vice president something to talk about Australia Day at the next meeting if I've got time. Get it in before the deadline. That will provide some background to people when they're considering the motion.
Yeah, I won't too distinctly.
So,
Councillor Scott.
Oh,
A second.
Oh, did you move it?
yeah,
Yes.
I'll second it.
incorporate.
I think it's only appropriate. It's a budgetary expense. It's community money that's being spent and it's nothing to hide. It's appropriate that that's included in the minutes.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? Should no need to reply, Chairman. All those in favour indicate. Carried unanimously. Councillor Parkin, you indicated no question. about that?
Yes, it was really just for an update on boundary change and what's going on there. Do we have any further updates?
Yeah, please, because I'm not sure if some of what you said plays with committees balance before about the
It hasn't. So through you, Chair, we have received a report from the Commission. We've received the investigators report. That has been circulated to the Boundaries Commission. The administration is looking at it internally, so we've been asked to fact check the document. So that's underway, and we've been asked to respond to the Commission by the 17th of June. So following that, the Commission will together a report, the Minister, recommendations, and then we'll make a determination.
Councillor March.
Can I just clarify something? That report that we received does not have recommendations. That's a key thing to understand. It has no recommendations. It's just fact check.
Yeah.
Fact check.
Councillor Stott, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to, thank you. Just following on from that, is Michael Richardson going to compile a response to that draft report after we have fact-checked aspects of it with a view to reiterating our positions on the report's justification for boundary change consistent with Campbelltown's arguments, things like closer to the depot, water runoff and those sort of things. We're going to put back hard on those.
Yes.
Yes, fantastic. Good.
But I will note that the administration will be drafting the response in consultation with BRM. So they'll provide some advice, but we will be drafting the response.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions about notice? So one quick one, the OTR, is there any point in us asking them when are they likely to make a decision? Like,
You're asking for a joke.
Well, but still, it's actually unheard of for length of time. Like, they, yeah.
We can see some from our sisters, but I think we're.
Do we have any motions about those? Okay, so we move on to reports. Which are next? With any reports from external organisations, authorities, and I think people would like to add in.
Next week.
CEO.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor, just a couple of items. One, we will be appointing a new Adelaide Hills Tourism Chair, and that'll be announced on Thursday. One of the other key focus areas is around my KPIs, developing those, and they will be going back to the panel at the end of June to deliberate on and endorse. Another key project that's been bouncing around is the AI early detection bushfire detection project, or the initiative, which we've been pushing for a number of years now, but seem to get a fair bit of support now from the local government list services. They'd like us to take that project to Canberra as well and talk to the relevant ministers there, and also the big body around local government list services, JNTL. And they've asked me to look at presenting to them, looking at advocating, and also looking at getting some grant funding to run that pilot program. And for those that are interested, I can recirculate the little prospectus document that we developed in relation to that initiative. That's all I have to.
Any questions for the CEO? Do you have any timings with relation to, I guess, presenting that case? Will LGRS, I guess, formally endorse our idea? Because that has been bouncing around for a while. We've always thought it's a great idea, but do you have any thoughts on timings or what?
We'll be looking at initiating it with the federal government during the campaign. NGO, which is next couple of weeks. But we are formulating a working group over the next week or so. And what we're hoping to do is get in principle support from neighbouring councils as well, like Mount Barker, Burnside, Campbelltown, and Mitcham, because they all are key stakeholders. And therefore, once we've got that support, we go to Canberra. As far as time frame, we are in the hands of the LGRS, and we're looking at making submissions at a federal level around attracting some grants in that space as well. But our LGRS are looking at supporting in a monetary sense this initiative as well. So I'm working with them with that, and clearly our role would be in kind at this point, and advocacy. So it's exciting project, and it's had some movement finally.
Any questions to the CEO? Move on to reports and committees. Council Assessment Panel, 30th May. Says that there's Neil, is that is Neil? So also none from the Audit and Risk Committee. However, we do have the COPRP minutes. Would someone like to move something in relation to those? So we have Councillor Grant. To move. We'll have a seconder, Councillor Gadigo. Should no debate with that. All those in favour, please indicate. It's carried unanimously. We have no minutes from the Boundary Change Committee, and we have no potential items. Our next ordinary meeting on the 23rd of June, but just a reminder, we have a short special council meeting subsequent to this one. So I declare the meeting closed at 8:34 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
But you've done that.
So it's for you.
Today.